Hey sports pharmacist, this is Ashley, your pharmacist with the International Sports Pharmacist Network. Visit sportspharmacist.org for more information. Today we're going to talk about the different agencies that might be doing testing of your athlete. After knowing which sport your patient athlete competes in, you'll want to be sure you ask the question, what agency is doing the testing? So that you can look up that specific prohibited list or banned substances list and know that there are differences between the different agencies and what they might be testing for. So, if you're working with a patient athlete that is an Olympian or Paralympian, they're most likely going to be tested by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, which uses the World Anti-Doping Agency's prohibited list. On the landing page here, you'll want to select what is prohibited, and the current prohibited list should come up for this year. You can download the PDF form or scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can see that there are 3 sections to this list. Substances and methods that are prohibited at all times, both in and out of competition. Substances prohibited in competition that need to be cleared from an athlete's sample by the time they're competing, and that in competition period can vary for different competitions, so be sure that you and the athlete work together to understand that as well. And when in doubt, contact the athlete or the organizers so that you know for sure what that in competition period is. And then the last category are substances prohibited in particular sports. I'm going to open up this example so you can see that currently it's just beta blockers that are on that list. And over on the right-hand side, there are just specific sports that are listed. Some of these are prohibited in competition and some are prohibited both in and out of competition. So if you're working with an athlete that is in one of the categories that prohibits a beta blocker in competition only, you as a pharmacist know that it is not clinically safe to abruptly stop a beta blocker, and so you'll still need to work with that athlete to get a therapeutic use exemption, most likely, because they're not going to be able to stop that medication. So for comparison, let's look at the NCAA banned substances list. I've scrolled all the way to the bottom of the page here because you can see a couple categories with examples. There is a lot of crossover between the WADA prohibited list and the NCAA list, but as an athlete, would you know whether or not your Brio inhaler is prohibited just by looking at this? At the bottom here we see that any substance that is chemically related to one of the above classes, even if it is not listed as an example, is also banned. And so here's where your pharmacy expertise can really come in handy for that patient athlete that you're working with. You'll know what category the prescription substance fits in and be able to help walk your athlete through whether or not it's a prohibited substance. So if your athlete is being tested by the NCAA, reference their list specifically. And when in doubt, call the agency directly and ask them whether or not the prescription is prohibited, and if it is, help walk your athlete through that therapeutic use exemption process. As another example, let's look at professional athletes. Major League Baseball. I'm not even positive that this is the current list, but this is what came up when I searched for their 2021 prohibited substances list. And you can see the category here of drugs of abuse. And I want to point this out to the pharmacist who might be working with professional athletes that any and all drugs or substances included in the Schedule 1 and 2 category of the CFR controlled substances list are included here. So if you're filling a C2 prescription for a professional athlete, look further and ask the question as to whether or not that might be a prohibited substance. And again, when in doubt, they have team doctors that they work with. They have people who know their prohibited substances list inside and out, so call their agency directly. If you're working with a UFC fighter, they use the United States Anti-Doping Agency for testing, but there are some nuances for fighters as well. You can see here that they have their own global drug reference online, and they have some variations with results management as well. I'm going to move on next to the Global Drug Reference Online, which is an online search engine that I am most familiar with, and this is set up based on the WADA prohibited list. You can see all these different nations that participate in putting together information for this search engine. So as far as I know, it is the most complete drug reference for athletes to look at the status of supplement or substances in sport. And you'll click on the United States flag, select pharmacist as your user type, be specific with the sport so that it matches what your athlete is competing in. If they're competing in more than one sport, then select the sport that will be the competition that they're coming up for, that they might be tested. We're just going to select badminton as an example. And you can see on the bottom left-hand side the top 5 search results. So albuterol is a very common question that athletes might have because it's prohibited by route, and then there are dose limits as well. So as a pharmacist, you can help your patient athlete understand this. So let's use that as an example. And you notice on the first drop down under that search bar that you can select directly from that. But let's pull this example up so that we can see it's going to give you all of the products that are available on the US market, or it should at least be mostly up to date. Be specific in selecting the inhaler and the strength of the specific product that your athlete is using so that it brings you to the right result. So I'm going to pick the MDI or HFA inhaler, and you can see the route of administration is showing that it is inhalation, and it's conditional use both in and out of competition. If we go to additional information below, you'll see it's a dose-limited product, and when the athlete is using it basically as prescribed, they're not going to exceed this amount. But as a good pharmacist, you also want to talk to your athlete about this being that they're not going to use 9 puffs in one dose to potentially misuse this inhaler just to not exceed that amount, that you'll still want to emphasize that their inhaler needs to be used as prescribed. So I hope that gives you a nice little introduction, just so you understand that there are variations between the lists. And the search engine that I am most familiar with is Global Drug Reference Online, so you might use that as your starting point to at least understand whether or not a substance might be on a prohibited list. And then look at the specific agency that might be doing the testing for your athlete so that you understand the nuances for those. Please leave your comments below and let me know any experiences that you're having with your patient athlete and how your practice is going. Good luck!